Welcome to the 706 podcast. I'm...
Sorry.
Okay, Kirk is already telling me to get on with it. This is my problem.
He's already mad.
My name is Connor. I like things long, let me say. I like long movies. I like long walks on the beach, long conversations. And that's not all, folks. But let me introduce you to my fellow people, my fellow cinephiles, my fellow co-hosts here. Please introduce yourselves, guys.
Anthony.
Kirk. I would say I'm a cinephiliac.
It's a bit more clinical. Yes.
I'm Tony. Cinephile will do just fine.
Okay, so today I brought in the movie. I got it wrong. I said 1971. It's actually 1974. John Cassavettes' 1974 film, A Woman Under the Influence. This film stars Peter Falk and Gina Rowlands as the Longhetti family. Mabel and Nick Longhetti. The movie sort of, the titular woman under the influence is, of course, Mabel Longhetti. And it's sort of about, well, how can I put this? I kind of want to put this delicately because I don't know how to put it. From the very beginning, we're sort of introduced to the character of Mabel as sort of a crazy woman, or she's unstable, she's strange, she's different. When we do meet her, she's kind of has all these idiosyncrasies. She's a bit strange. She talks, doesn't seem to have this kind of social awareness. And essentially, the movie has a very simple plot. She has a nervous breakdown. She's committed to an asylum, essentially. 6 months later, she comes back. Things go on from there. We can talk about individual scenes, things that happen. We can talk about if there is a climax to the movie, what is it? But I'll just keep that brief. So, what did you guys think about the movie? What were your first impressions?
I thoroughly enjoyed the film. I thought that this was kind of a piece where it's like they're watching it. They're at the first screening, and Peter Falk and Gina Rowlands are like looking over at each other, like, "It's gonna be so good on my reel." They both just do such a great job. They're both like, I guess she has kind of a showier performance, but I think they both just do a really fantastic job.
Both pretty loud and bombastic, these two
They're
actors.
very colorful, big performances for sure. They're both kind of tightly wound individuals, and they echo each other in interesting ways. They kind of do similar things in certain ways. But I think their relationship and the way they interact I'm just saying, I thought the parts of the movie where people acted really good. No, but there's the character stuff and the interactions of that were so just solid and just well done, and I just love the whole backstretch, the last like half hour, or just after the time jump where she's returning from her institutionalization, and she's coming home to like a welcome home party, and we're just basically seeing it in almost what feels like real time, where she just comes home and we see how it all plays out. It's just very painful and very just well done, and just the way every line feels motivated and means another thing, and just the things that aren't being expressed and the things that are being expressed and the things that certain characters just fail to grasp and that other people go on to. I just thought it was magnificently, just beautifully written, just drama, just character drama, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a longer movie, but it didn't feel too long, and I thought Cassavetes, who I haven't seen any of his other films, but I thought he just did an excellent job with the writing and the directing. I love the use of the handheld and the long lenses, and just giving us this feeling of just distance the way when she comes home. Finally, he delays us seeing her for just as long as possible. We see from her POV people like sticking their heads in the car. We see from this really long shot of the car. It's like a close-up on a really long lens where she's just parking. We see her leave, and she is immediately obscured by this tree. It's almost putting us in the head of her husband, who's just waiting. He's just in suspense. And also just when she's at this asylum or whatever facility, we don't see any of that. We only hear the smallest of glimpses, and it's so much more powerful for what we don't see and what we don't know. We hear just enough to know what it must have been like for her. We just see how he's dealing with it during this time. And I just found those scenes very effective. I'm rambling on at this point, but I thought it was a very good movie.
Kirk?
Yeah, go ahead.
Anthony.
We talked about the acting. I mean, I imagine that most people would be familiar with this director through his roles. Actually, he's famously been called a actor's director. He himself was an actor. Most famously, probably Rosemary's Baby. Great movie. Now, the scenes in this movie that I actually particularly loved were the scenes with the children, and particularly in their interactions with the mother. I thought were seemed very veridical, for lack of a better word. Everything about him was very powerful. With that, and I mean, last week Connor brought up the French New Wave as saying they were sort of fans of Cassavettes, and I've seen his first film and enjoyed it. So going in, this film had everything sort of working for it. You know, John Godard praised him early on. I don't know what they thought about this later period, and so that's why when I watched it, I felt really frustrated. I did not like this movie actually at all. I think the first half has a lot of stuff going on that's deeply problematic. Going into the second, Cassavetes, we call him an actor's director, and he allows them to go on with these scenes and let them act, which is really quite good. But when we really sit back to think about it, particularly with Mabel, we see these scenes from her that are truly empathetic, and they should be quite tragic. But by letting them go on for so long, and by our knowledge that it's a movie, we begin to it begins to take on a different element than those two of what I've just said. I mean, we watched it, and I feel like this is not a reaction we should be having, but we heard laughter, which is so frustrating to me to hear. But I imagine it'd be a bigger problem with the larger audience. I imagine we hear that again. My second big complaint about the overall movie is I imagine that such a positive reaction occurs because for me this is a movie that's very comfortably masculine. Everything about Mabel, which I'm so worked up to perceive, it's called A Woman Under the Influence. And, you know, I'm not just having this argument because it's the title, but the whole first half that's working me to see what's going to happen, what's going on with her. By the time we get to the end, the reassurance is not placed with her. It's again placed with Peter Falk's character. Is it Nick? Nick. It's giving off a message of the paternal saying, if you take care of, as long as you keep to it, whatever you perceive or believe, you yourself will be taken care of in your own way at the end, which is why I absolutely hated that it ends with them going to bed together, or what we believe is going to bed together. It seems to me that he did not learn the right lesson and that does not seem to be a complaint about his character throughout the film either.
Wait, what did you think he learned? What did you think the lesson he learned was that was wrong?
No, he didn't learn the right lesson.
What was the wrong lesson that he learned? Do you think he learned that he shouldn't have? You know what I'm saying? You said he learned the wrong lesson. What's the wrong lesson?
Well, I'm saying he learned the wrong lesson as that he didn't learn anything at all.
He didn't learn. Okay.
Well, I'll get back to this later on. I feel like I was talking for quite some time. I'll get to Kirk.
Wait, what was the lesson he was supposed to learn? I want that clarification.
Oh, okay. Well, my idea is that, or my thought going in, I'm still processing my first time seeing it. It's such a complicated and established movie, is that the idea around the Mabel's character, her whole breakdown, we're seeing this all, and by the time we get to the second part of the movie, when she's coming back to the house and this famous dinner party scene that was quite hyped up for me, and he kicks everyone out and he begins to tell her to get down. He slaps her. The only people who seem to really get Mabel, or who seem to have sort of some connection that I thought was powerful, were the kids, and he's going against these kids at every point in turn, trying to send them up to their room when they come down, and they're able to reassure the mother and bring her back to, for lack of a better word, what seems to be sanity. And in this whole time, he's not actually delivering actions that are, in my belief, helpful or anything. So by the time we get to the end of the film and we see him, he doesn't seem to have gained anything from this beyond what is the initial belief. He can't even tell her he loves her. So this is not a movie about a loving couple coming together, like many critics I know would argue. But it seems to be just, in the end for him, the final fallout is then just going to bed.
Okay.
Was that he's very passive by the end. But isn't that sort of what he learned to do based on... anyway, I think it's a good point. Let's let Kirk talk.
I don't want to hog the mic.
I'm sorry.
No worries. it's interesting to hear everybody's opinions. This movie is quite exhausting. I would disagree with Tony, and as is subjective, I feel that it for me it did feel much longer than it actually ran. And I would say, like, I feel a similar sense of exhaustion compared to what I did, how I felt after seeing Cachet. If you guys go back into our backlog and listen to that episode, but instead of that was kind of more of a cognitive frustration. This is more of an affective disillusionment. I don't really know how to express it, but this played more on the emotive processes at work in me. This movie I thought was very well done. I thought it was extremely well acted. I think that there's a lot there for someone who's going into the line of work I'm going into and has a passion for mental health and for just for interpersonal effectiveness, also for the idea of deviance and the idea of power relationships. I would say this movie was kind of a critique upon a patriarchal system at work in 1970s America. I would say that the character, the father, we're meant from the beginning to see him as sort of a grounding force. But as I watched the movie, the more the movie played on, the less I became. The less I came to trust him as that grounding force, and the more I saw him as kind of a volatile, unstable figure in Mabel's life and in the children's lives. I think this movie is a lot about who is allowed to call whom crazy, what that term means, how we're supposed to act, and in what situation. And also, I think, the laughter, though it was a little annoying, and I made, some comments during it, I think the director would say that the laughter, what does the laughter say? More not about the movie, but more about us and about our inability. What is that, a cliche, Tony?
Well, no, I thought you were like, no, it sounds like it's like about
not about you, about us as in general. I laughed at a couple parts about our inability to or our need to defend, because laughter is a defense.
I mean, I think there are things in the movie that are just straight up, they're funny. Like, honestly, I think there are scenes in the movie that are funny and were written to be funny.
I am not a spaghetti man.
Hey, come on. Like, I'm not a spaghetti man. And some of those scenes where, like, the dad's on the beach with the kids, like, it's tragic, but just the way he handles his kids, and he's so oblivious, and his friend, like, come on. Like,
I'm not talking about those scenes. I'm talking specifically about Mabel's scenes of exaggerated, sort of carried on, for lack of a better word, breakdowns.
Yeah.
Well, you did laugh. I mean,
I don't think we're laughing.
The daughter comes back, or the Mabel comes back, and the daughter says she doesn't want to see her. You're laughing.
Sure.
Why are you laughing?
Because oh my god, so now this has become like
No, well, you're attacking my position.
I'm laughing because that's like the worst thing you could say. It's the most hurtful thing you could say to your mother. It's horrible.
But guess what? Her daughter is extremely overtly, explicitly traumatized. Has been by Mabel's absence for 6 months. In a very sensitive, critical period in her life.
Saying kids will do this. Kids don't know what they're saying. They don't realize the effect it has on adults. I'm not disagreeing with any of that. I don't think we have misread the scene differently at all. I think it's not like you see it's a tragic thing and I think it's a funny thing. I think it can be both. I think that's my response. I mean, I'm a kind of person who I can watch Raging Bull and I will laugh at scenes I'm not supposed to laugh at because that's how I respond.
I didn't want to.
I don't think that means it's like a horror.
What I'm saying is this movie plays at the uncomfortability of situations that were not normally exposed to in our everyday lives and that we don't know how to react towards.
And my argument against that, though, would be like, because Tony brought up the POV of Mabel, particularly in the cab, is there's a problem of Cassavetes' choice and direction here, is that too often he'll let us linger on seeing her have a breakdown and too quickly switch us away from moments when it seems to be her crises. So in the cab, we get to see a sort of feeling of uncomfortability with the way these women are approaching her and saying, you look great, but instantly we're back with Peter Falk's character and watching them come over, and we don't go back. We instead stay with him. And this movie, if it's supposed to be about perhaps patriarchy or problems of who to call mad and whatnot, why aren't we seeing more of the POV of a character who's actually suffering this, as opposed to just watching them let him suffer?
Because he's trying to seduce us into Peter Falk's point of view. He's trying to allow us to side with him and to see her actions as irrational and as coming from seemingly nowhere, as being completely arbitrary. Where when in fact he is verbally abusive. We know this. He said, he did hit her a couple times. Whatever. It's bad, but I know I don't want to make
harp on it.
I'm not going to harp on that. I'm just saying he's an unpredictable guy. He yells a lot.
I'm sorry.
No, I think
I have a reading of that scene. I think I know why he would opt to do that. I think that what follows with the dinner party and everything is we see so much of her anguish, and we see her husband so just he just doesn't get it at all. He's just so oblivious to her needs and her we don't know exactly how she's quote crazy unquote. We don't know what exactly her specific problem is, but her husband. But we as the audience know better than this guy who just he cannot deal with it. He doesn't know how to. He's not accommodating to his wife at all. But this is putting us in. We're letting us sort of understand why he's like this, because he hasn't seen his wife in 6 months. He doesn't have a clue. He doesn't have a clue what's going on. He just wants his life back. He just wants everything to be fine. And in that moment, we're like, it's been 6 months. We haven't seen her. What is she going to be like? What is it going to be when we see her? So we're held with him, and we're held in that suspense, so that when we see how he acts later, kind of the desperation of how he treats his wife, we can understand it, even if we know it's horrible. That's what I think the reason for that.
But my argument already against that is we already know he's like that. We see before at work, he doesn't know how to respond. He's going to instantly jump and take the kids, which is to some degree, I guess, understandable if you just had a traumatic moment. You want to be with the people you love. But earlier, we were already fed information about his mindset of things he's complained to his mother about with Mabel. We saw before also, again, that it's his mom who has to tell him that she needs to go to a hospital. It's the mom who had to call the doctor. We know already for this long time that he does not know how to handle this situation. So by the time we get to the scene with the cab, we already know what type of character he is. He has not learned anything different. So by switching to his POV, it's not doing anything different. It's not fully accomplishing something else like that.
I don't know. I guess for me, I'm just in the. I think in that. For me, in that, I don't want to drag on the scene forever. I think in that moment for me, I just kind of fell right there with him. I was just like, what is it going to be like? What's she going to be like when she gets out of that cab? And I'm just in suspense, and I'm anxious, and I felt that through the direction. Which I guess I respectfully disagree, but anyway, I don't want to keep going.
Well, what do you want to talk about, Connor?
Yeah, one take on the movie. We already got right into the juice of it. I was gonna kind of bullshit about Cassavetes for 15 minutes, but no, we really got into the meat of it. Basically, and I'm really glad what you guys said. I'll put this out there. One way, I think this is an exaggerated, kind of simple way of looking at the movie. It's not quite saying this, but it could be the idea is that actually maybe it's Peter Falk's character is the really crazy one, that he's actually kind of the inciting incident of all this stuff, and it's just he's the one who has the ability to commit her to a hospital because he's the man of the house, etc. So that feeds immediately into kind of the a feminist reading of the movie, which I think is even feminists find that a little bit too easy. It's too simple, and it kind of discounts the agency of Mabel herself and all this. But it is interesting, right? I mean, Peter Falk's character has these same kind of idiosyncrasies. He goes off the handle completely. He's a much more angry man, much more angry than Mabel is. But at the same time, it's like we can tolerate that from him. Somehow we can tolerate it from him but we can't tolerate it in a woman who's a mother. We can't. So that's kind of one take on it. But I've lost my train of thought. Anthony, do you have something to say? Or I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
I was going to say something. There's a hard cut to black right when the official process of committing begins for Mabel, which in during the scene, which could arguably be considered like the climax of the movie, or like kind of that. I don't know.
It's an act break.
Act break, yeah, exactly.
Part of the story.
Doctor Zepp, the family doctor, takes out a piece of paper. I have a piece of paper, and then fade to black, and then we see 6 months later.
What that serves, the purpose it serves for me is it serves the idea, like I said, of obscuring, of obfuscating Mabel's struggle of this. I would say of barring the audience from being able to empathize with Mabel in any meaningful way. We're not allowed to see the elaborate ritual of being committed, of being in the hospital. We this whole movie we see from his point of view, essentially, except for like the first scene where Mabel does exert agency, like you said. But she cheats on him
yes.
rather unwillingly, kind of in a way.
Very beginning of
And I think that scene as well, it's kind of meant to build some resentment toward, it's like, how dare this mother, she sends off her kids and then
do you think we're supposed to think this?
Yeah, the audience.
Oh, really? That's because that
was maybe, yeah. Well, and also, the very first scene, the very first conversation we get between the two, Peter Falk Nick calls Mabel, says, okay, you're my girl. And she doesn't say anything back. He basically says, I can't make it tonight. I can't make it to the date tonight. He says, you're my girl. She says nothing back, which is kind of interesting, kind of parallel of the end of the movie. Of course, maybe not such an emotionally charged moment, but sorry.
In defense of him, though, how emotionally draining must that life have been? I think, there's a lot of resilience between all of them. You can tell that Mabel loves her kids. She asks about her kids when she gets home. You can tell that Peter Falk loves his kids.
Yeah,
she's constantly worried about her kids.
I'm sure Peter Falk loves his kids as well.
Yeah,
there's such desperation to be a good dad and be a good mom.
Yeah, they're trying
such a heart-wrenching
to live within these roles, these socially subscribed or prescribed roles.
One thing I think this movie really nails, and I really felt from both of these parents, is this idea of like you're with the kids. I obviously don't have kids, but like I felt in a similar way with people where
kind of puts you into it.
You're with them, and you're just like, things aren't the way they're supposed to be, and you're so desperate to just make it the way it's supposed to be. It's like we're gonna go to the beach, we're gonna have fun. And it's like yelling, and it's like obviously if you want to have fun, you don't yell that we're gonna have fun. But he's like so desperate that like things are gonna be okay. And he does this again at the party. He's like, we're gonna have fun, we're gonna have this party, everything's gonna be great. But like he wants to force it so that that's what it is. But you can't force that. And he just doesn't. He's just so desperate, he doesn't know what to do. And she does a similar thing when she has her little like party where she invites like the dad and her like his like kids over, and they have this party that kind of goes off the rails. And yeah, it's just she's just desperate to just be a normal good mom, and you just make things the way they're supposed to be. And I really felt that. I thought it was powerful.
We get two instances though with the dad, with Nick. One at the end, that's I wouldn't call excusable, but where he does yell at the kids, and then before, as the mother's screaming his opinions into Mabel's ear, and she says, "You gave him," or he told me you gave him ugly ass children, or whatever it was. Along
Who
those
says
lines.
this?
This is the mother as she's screaming into Mabel's ear. She's giving him the opinions. You gave him children he didn't want. And then at the end of the line, we get something similar, but this time it's the one time from him. We get instances of hints of him as kind of like maybe he is trying to fulfill this fatherly role, like you said at the beach, but he doesn't know how to do it. But also it seems to be a role that he actually doesn't quite want.
Yeah, if I could say there's one little detail. There's one scene that goes by really quick where they talk and Mabel says, it's kind of this chilling, horrifying kind of scene where they're both in bed and they're saying like it's us against the world, you and me, and but then Mabel says to Nick like, I remember, when I told you I was pregnant, you didn't believe me, you looked so surprised, and then he was so mad. She says simply, he was so mad, like a toad. He's referring to probably her dad, So there's something about like a shotgun wedding. This was not like essentially. This was probably something rushed, hasty. But I think despite that, there seems to be a lot of love between these characters that are really trying to do the best they can. Although with Nick, like I said, I think he's pretty crazy. If you're going to call Mabel crazy, he's crazy as well. He says, "I'm going to kill those son of a bitchin' kids." He says he's going to kill his own kids. He says multiple times, "I'm going to kill you." He's like a homicidal man in terms of what he says. Compared to Mabel, he's a lot worse. So, and maybe we can get that's just a dad being a dad, right? Not to stress that, but I think if you do want to think about that, it's kind of interesting.
One other point about Nick is I took a photo of this because I actually thought it was pretty striking and it really bugged me at the time. I still don't quite have a reading, but there's a great scene when they're all in bed together and Nick is sitting there with the kids. It's like the one time I get I kind of feel on reflection a genuine moment of maybe interest when they're just they're whistling and the mom's Mabel comes over, she yells, "Let's go, you have to go to school," and he goes, "Well, come on, let's wait a minute." He pulls her down into bed and they're blowing different songs together when the mom comes by. And the mom, interesting enough, is wearing a practically similar outfit to Mabel when he pushes Mabel aside and pulls the mom over and begins kissing her on the upper forehead in a way that's just, to me, very funny and
very
really weird. There is
weird.
something very weird about mothers in this movie, and I don't think it quite pulls together by the end, but...
that is a very odd moment for him. I don't know how it ties together with the rest of the stuff.
Well, I found it interesting because the mom is the one who has to feed him his own actual opinions to the wife until we get to the end when he's finally able to yell after he's kicked everyone out.
One tidbit. Nick's wife, Mabel, played by Gina Rowlands, the wife of Cassavetes himself, John Cassavetes. And Nick's mother, played by Mrs. Cassavetes, I should say. So his mom. So kind of interesting.
Wow, you must love this, the Freudian readings here.
Well, it's true. We do marry our mothers. I think that we don't see a father in this movie until the last fourth of it.
That's true.
The last 40 minutes or whatever. But
Mabel's dad comes up really suddenly at the end.
Yeah. So I was going to mention something though. Regarding what you guys were discussing. Oh yeah, kind of.
Where they're on the bed.
Yeah, where they're on the bed. I mean. Oh shoot! I think. Oh yeah, I was just gonna say like the uncomfortability, like the first scene where she kind of cheats on him. She walks into a bar. It was so cringeworthy for me. It was just so much like something that I've been socialized to believe was being betrayed on screen, as well as. What
was that? What were you even socialized to believe that was betrayed?
That you don't go up to strangers and start singing, or you don't,
okay.
like what and
Gotcha.
It wasn't about infidelity. Like, infidelity is. I'm not a Puritan, but and also he has his coworkers over for like a lunch or a dinner. I don't even know. It's like 8 in the morning. Yeah,
spaghetti breakfast. My favorite scene.
Sounds something out of iCarly.
She's like
spaghetti breakfast.
She starts getting a little close, not in an intimate way, but in like an intrusive way to one of his coworkers, and he yells at her and sits her down, and it was just like, sigh of relief, like he shut her up. It's very. I think this was all intentional. I think, and I want to pose a question to my coworkers. Did you feel more uncomfortable when she was kind of holding that gentleman's face, or did you feel more uncomfortable when he slapped her off the couch? And I would argue it's the first one. I would argue that her kind of disavowal of our social contract is much more egregious in our eyes than him slapping us. Maybe it's just what we believe as a culture. You were more shocked. You were more uncomfortable, more squeamish.
Well, just to quickly go back real quick, because I forgot to say this about her infidelity, is she doesn't seem to actually be fully aware of what's going on. I think it's important to note.
It's true.
She wakes up and she's also worried. She doesn't know who this man is. But yet you're seen at the table. I felt like these construction people know something's up with something's off about her. She's able to kind of like talk to him, and they go, "Don't you remember me?" Maybe that seems to be the one moment of, "Well, can't you realize this?" But when she gets up and she starts walking over and leaning her face, this man doesn't stop like I think I would if I was in his situation, or like I think most people. He continues on. In fact, he looks at her, briefly smiles, and keeps singing.
I'm not talking about that guy. I'm talking about the
Yeah,
next guy.
handsome
Yeah,
guy.
just
He
the-
does.
No, yeah,
the
but no,
look
well,
of just utter disdain.
I was using that to build up of, and then when I get to this guy, I feel like they have already an established notion that something seems to be off. So when he's politely saying no, I think he looks over at Nick and just realizes he has to keep saying no for Nick's sake as opposed to Mabel's.
Well, what did you guys think? I mean, because
About what? About am I more uncomfortable, or what do you?
Yeah, what made you more uncomfortable?
The slap. I mean, I think I was. Wait, what?
Okay,
I'm trying to answer your question.
Fair
I'm
enough.
thinking it through. I'm thinking it through.
Okay.
I think I was uncomfortable for both of them. I don't know which one made me more. And they're uncomfortable in kind of different ways.
Yeah, that's
the slap's
true.
kind of a
That's
shock,
true.
like a punch to the gut. But the other one's a little more of a sustained, like, Jesus, what's going on here? But one thing about that scene I thought was really odd is, I don't know if this is intentional. I feel like it must have been. She only she's flirting with all the black guys, like exclusively. So I don't know if it's this weird thing to like get her husband's attention or make him feel threatened or what. It was very odd, but I felt it was very clearly what she's doing.
We got into a subject that I think is the one of the few things I think no one ever talks about with this movie, or that I haven't seen in my brief checking out of various reviews. Everyone talks about, of course, social aspects of. No one talks about the element of class and race in this movie, and I think it actually is kind of important. The spaghetti breakfast is the perfect scene for this. Oh man, that spaghetti! I feel like I was at that spaghetti breakfast. But no, so it is this perfectly awkward work breakfast. It's just his friends from work, and it's a mixed race crew. It's like half Italians and a couple black guys. And there's kind of this whole thing where they're kind of bullshitting, and there's an Italian guy trying to sing opera, and then the black guy is played by Hugh Hurd, who's also in Shadows, another one of Cassavettes' movies. He just belts out this beautiful aria that's kind of a subversion, and there's this kind of playful tension between men, between ethnicities, and then kind of Mabel kind of fucks it up. Because as soon as she gives attention to a black man, suddenly it gets uncomfortable. And I think it's mostly, this is not necessarily us who are doing it, or it's not them, it's not the black men or even the other co-workers there. It really is actually just sort of Nick's hypersensitivity to the situation. He claims later that he yelled at Mabel because, he says, that black guy wouldn't know that he would have thought you really meant something. So he's trying to he has this kind of interesting racial imaginary where he has to be the man who steps in and intervenes and is in control of his wife. That's a class-based thing too. Very complicated. I don't want to. I'm going to end up saying something super offensive if I just keep talking like this. But I don't remember if I'm remembering it right. But when she says hi to one of his coworkers, it's one of the first people she meets. Was it a person of color? It was one of the black men.
Oh, I didn't notice. Yeah, I thought it was someone she
in the first scene where she's introducing herself, she talks to two of the black guys in a row, and then at the table she talks to three different black guys in a row. So I think it's very clear pattern.
I don't remember the guy's face
before
the whole spaghetti.
My opinion is that with the opera singer guy and Billy Tidrow, who are the two guys she pays the most attention to, I think they're kind of the new faces at the table. She's interested in them, Also because the one guy sings opera, she seems to be a real lover of classical music. It's never a thing that people kind of validate her in any way for, but she seems to really love this stuff.
Lake.
So she seems to really enjoy it and be right there with the opera guy, And she really thinks it's really fun, and that kind of is misinterpreted, or not by anyone at the table, but really only by Nick. Is kind of misinterprets that as he sees that as a thing that is interpretable as some kind of sexual come-on.
But she did call the one guy handsome many, many times in a way that almost feels like she's so trying to get her husband's attention.
So handsome, yeah. You're right about that. It is interesting.
I think in that scene he does mention in the context of fertility and babies. He repeatedly says it's in the air. There's this pathogen that's infecting us. I think it plays for me on the idea of the kind of the etiology of Mabel's condition, if you want to even call it that. Where is it endogenous, or is it from the outside? Is it socially prescribed? It's a
great question.
And at the end, he's putting a Band-Aid on it. Literally, he's putting a Band-Aid on her hand. He's trying to cover up his transgressions. I don't know. there was something there. I think if I had more time to kind of sit down, or maybe on a second
I'm already
viewing.
feeling completely lost trying to talk about this
All
movie.
right. Well, we're running a little long
We're
right now, so I think we should
long.
move on to the voting.
Okay.
All
Sure.
right.
Let's move on to the voting. Who wants to go first? Anthony, I want you to say something. I want you to get another word in.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I want to go back to what your critiques were of what the word problematic you used.
Oh, yeah.
How would you say, what's the most problematic aspect of this movie?
Oh, you want me to do that now? I thought you wanted a final word.
Well, before you're leading into your vote,
Yeah, leading into your
say what exactly your thoughts are.
All right, well, can you
curious.
reiterate the point? Sorry.
So, like, what do you think is the most problematic? You said in the first half it's kind of problematic. You mean socially, filmically, cinematically?
First, I should say, I used a term called, what did I use? It was casual masculinity. Be sure to attribute that to Anthony Gomez III, or find my article on
Always.
JSTOR. Yes, that is Anthony
Great
Gomez
term.
III on JSTOR.
We're doing plugs now, I guess. We've gone completely.
It's going to be in my stuff. Okay, I use it.
Yeah.
Okay, so my full annoyance, I guess, and it was certain parts were relieved, of course, and Kirk's, I think, criticism or address actually at the end of In the Air. It's an idea I didn't think about. I'll have to think about it more. But going back to the idea of problematic with this film, in particular, the first half is we're so set up, I guess, with Peter Falk's character. And when we do see Mabel, my annoyance is in Cassavetes' direction, this choice of lingering on scenes that begin to turn from what I was saying was empathetic and tragic, begins to become, to me, merely just exploitative and rather annoying. It seems to be that we're getting so much emphasis on the man as opposed to the female, when that is, in my argument, would be a larger thematic point that the movie's trying to get across. And when it does handle the man, it doesn't seem to do so in a way that's successful, or even or in a way that reconciles with its thematic approach to the Mabel character. If that at all makes sense. I know
Makes
this
sense.
is a hard thing to process. It's a hard film.
No, you said it well. So let's get your vote.
Oh, no.
No? Kurt?
Okay. I very much enjoy this movie. What's that?
No, this is not go on.
Oh no,
Cool
I'm not
Anthony.
Anthony. I'm not gonna do the typical Anthony thing.
Is that what I
Your
do?
dad is doing really great in heaven. He's dead. But
That was very morbid.
no.
That's what our topic.
I quite enjoyed this movie. Technically speaking, it wasn't the greatest in my opinion. Granted, I don't know a lot about film like these other people. I thought the sound mixing particularly, it was just there was too wide of a spectrum for me. There were parts where I really could not hear what was going on, and some of the, maybe it was the platform we were watching on, but some of the filming was janky, which was deliberate, I know, but almost to a nauseating
You mean
extent.
janky?
I mean, like random zooms and just like
You
I
mean
don't know.
handheld and stuff?
Yeah, okay, handheld,
I
sure.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some of that.
I know I liked it
It's a
too.
cheaper
It
movie.
did add to the kind of raw feeling of it, but I don't know.
Didn't ring your bell.
Nevertheless, despite all that, which wasn't much, I did very much like this movie. It's a yes. So go
Okay,
ahead,
cool.
Tony.
Yeah, no, I'm a strong yes. I think this is the more we talk about it, I think it's one of those movies where the more you talk about it, the more kind of layers you see. I think it's positively chewy and yummy, and I enjoyed it. And it's a movie that, for me, as it came around to the second half, its greatness became clear. I think this is a great film.
Okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's very chewy. It's a very chewy movie. I really wish I could talk more about this with you guys. I'm already I'm raring to go. I feel like I've only just started. I will say this. What is the influence? Some people literally think this movie is about a woman who's addicted to Valium or something. Like, people really think this is what the whole movie is about. People don't know. So, and I think Kirk raised a great point. Maybe the influence is society. Maybe it's not. Maybe it comes from her. Maybe it's because she drinks a lot. Alcohol is a theme. Anyway, I'll end right there. Is there anything else we have to say? Okay,
That's
no.
it.
We move on. We move on to the next section where you guys suggest a movie, and I get to choose which one I want to see, and then we'll watch that one for next week.
I'm going last.
I'll go
Uh-oh,
first.
get something good.
The Twitter sphere is afire with discussions of my best of 2013 list. This is blowing everyone's minds.
Internal analog Twitter where we just pass notes to each other.
So, this is a film from that list. It's Frances Ha. It's a movie by Noah Baumbach, black and white, French New Wave influence, shot on a DSLR for cheap. It's a good movie. Go on.
Ooh, I really don't have much of a movie right now. I would say, shoot. You know what? I'm not going to give us an explicit.
He already swore. It was actually him this time.
Shit, fuck. Anthony, can you go? Please.
You can't think of anything, really?
I honestly, it slipped my mind. I'm having a mental.
I think Kirk is like run out of movies he likes. He likes like 10 movies.
I think this is a ploy to gauge the competition.
No,
Say
not
Josie and the Pussycats. Take it.
Spice World 2?
Spice World 2.
Okay, I'll go. I'll give Kirk an extra couple minutes here. I feel like after hearing my reactions to the last two films, Tony's really trying to test me. By picking Frances Ha. I much rather he had picked any other Noah Baumbach movie, to be honest. So as for me, I'm really waiting for the day I could throw out some Truffaut, some Hitchcock, but after the heavy selection and the heavy foreign selections we've done quite in the past, I've decided not to do those today. And it is Connor. If you've been listening to this show, you know what type of movie I'm going to propose. I'm talking about animation.
Oh.
All right, I'm going back. Last time I suggested Coraline, he said no. He nominated Iron Giant as one of the best animated films of all time, and I said no. So I'm nominating a film. I'm buying some time for you, Kirk. So
I got it. You're good.
So the film I'm talking about is, in my opinion, one of the greatest animated films of all time. And also, after going off this movie, is one of the greatest female animated characters of all time. I'm talking about 1991's Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast.
Disney Beauty and the Beast.
And with that, I'm going to suggest American History X. It's about a skinhead neo-Nazi in LA in the mid-90s, whenever. Edward Norton, I don't know who directed it. It's a great movie. I don't have my phone with me.
I would have known
to research. I'm just, it's off the cuff.
I believe it's Tony K. I believe it's Tony K. And I haven't even seen it, but so look it up at home. I might be wrong.
It, Anthony?
I've seen it, yeah.
Okay, have you seen it,
I've
Connor?
seen it, yeah.
Ah, shit. Okay, well, I'm not going to win.
We've all seen Frances Ha.
No, we haven't.
I have seen Frances.
Oh, you have? Have you?
Well, yeah.
No, I guess Connor's seen everything.
Oh, have you seen Frances Ha?
I have not.
Okay,
no.
so three. Okay, so we're in the same boat. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've all probably seen Beauty and the Beast at some point.
Yes.
I've seen it, yeah.
All right.
But rebuttals, right?
Rebuttals,
all right.
guys.
So Beauty and the Beast, I have a specific one. So for one, I saw it fairly recently, and two, a certain other film podcast discussed this very film, and I don't want to put us in competition with them. And I'm just not that excited to see it again because I saw it recently. As for American History X, I've been meaning to watch it for a while. I think it would be a fine choice. But again, I think mine's a little lighter. It's a little fluffier after all the heavy emotional beating we've been taking the past couple weeks. So that's my argument for Frances Ha.
Okay.
That's the sound you'll make when you're watching it, Kirk. So...
Okay. So I let me just make sure I have this. So Tony,
intro.
If I heard you right,
you did.
You
definitely
let
did.
me cross check. All right. Okay. Well.
Go ahead. Fine. All right. Fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So you have like kind of a documentary miniseries about prescription drug abuse in mainland Europe. France is high. Is that correct? And then
that's it. Yeah.
And then Anthony, you're detailing Tony's future marriage. Is that right?
Is he Beauty or the Beast?
Yeah, that's the thing.
I'll leave it up to the audience's imagination.
It's bad either way. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, on that subject, the way Tony's shirt is bun has been revealing some chest hair. It's quite a sexually provocative move here.
Anyways,
I guess we're going for some new fans.
Love you, Tony. Actually. Plot twist: Tony and I are getting married on the Beast. Right.
You know what he means by that.
You can always rely on Kirk to throw himself under.
And my movie's great. I'm just not selling it well. But who needs to sell a Ferrari when it's on the street? You know, just
not great enough to know the director, but it's just good.
Well, I'm not. I'm a cinephiliac. I'm not a cinephile. I told you this.
All right, Anthony.
Say your
American History X is a really good movie. I think everyone should see it. It's always unfortunately topical in the American climate we live in about race. And I mean, Edward Norton gives such a great performance. It's worth checking out. As for Francis Hall, I don't know about how the discussion would go. I think you guys know how my view or my general sort of reaction is. I'm really not looking forward to seeing it again. I don't find it very substantial to support myself, speaking, much conversation. So if Tony wants to exclude me out again, feel free to go for Francis Ha. As for my movie, one, we haven't done animation. Two, I've been, given all this talk heading on the internet, I've been really trying to throw out things that have much more of a female influence on the production. I think it is a movie that is very good. It may have been talked about on other podcasts, but we have so many other podcasts out there. I'm sure we've had a number of our movies intersect. As for Beauty and the Beast, we hear so much about the titular sort of theme of it. We never hear much about the other interactions of the characters, I think. I think it's a movie that recognizes that learning, that reading, is in fact something that we do individually, but is in fact a collective debt that we owe to those around us. It's about recognizing our learnings and reconciling education to beliefs.
All right, so...
Sorry, I didn't mean to go on so long.
So,
I think we know
heard
who
the
wants
choices.
to win.
He definitely wants to win. I'm pretty stumped. Yeah, this is a bit tough. Francis Ha, I have seen. I think it's a good movie. It's not a great movie that I love. I'd be interested to force Anthony to fight against it. To pit him in gladiatorial combat with Francis Ha. I'm not sure though if I'm gonna pick that one. Kirk's movie is a great movie. I do really want to revisit it again. Honestly, it's just that well, Kirk, you just went basically. Yeah, officially that is not a valid reason to not pick someone at all. Okay. But I'm just putting my thoughts out there.
Okay.
As for Beauty and the Beast, it's like immediately I'm like, I don't want to watch that. It just I don't know. It just but Anthony also brings a good point that we are not in competition with any podcast out there. We're in a league. We stand alone. We are in a league of our own.
You know, the other podcasts aren't going to talk about women under the influence because we did it. That's how it is.
It's true.
They look at us first.
They look to us. We're the
I'm sure no other film podcast has talked about Royal Tenenbaums or.
So even though I
Barney's Great Adventure,
even though I appreciate Anthony's thing where he always says that he's going to pick a thing, or he always says even though I appreciate, I'm going to pick Anthony's thing.
Okay.
Interesting.
Well done.
So I'm picking Beauty and the Beast. Yeah, I mean we're overdue for animation. Let's be honest.
16 films and no animation.
I'm curious. There's a lot of buzz about this. It'll be something a bit different.
We're doing the remake, the live-action remake soon.
Oh, I was actually nominating Beauty and the Beast Part 2, guys.
Oh, the straight to video.
Look forward to.
If it were me, I would have picked Aladdin 3, but.
Yeah, Jafar's Revenge.
We're gonna suck all the blood we can out of that stone.
Actually,
he's gonna be reading from Ulysses by the end, while Tony and I are eating atomic wings.
We're gonna have
Connor
some serious exegesis.
We should just play Kingdom Hearts actually and do the Beauty.
That's what I was thinking. I honestly know the Beauty and the Beast part of that game better than I know the movie in terms of what I remember. So it is the movie I least remember.
So millennials, feel free, come over.
I will have seen this movie a weird amount of times by the time we've done this. All right. I've seen it a lot. I was also in the high school production of Beauty and the Beast.
You have to get the last word.
I played
we're over time.
No, I know, but I just want it's relevant. I was in Beauty and the Beast in high school. I played the candle. I played a corkscrew in Be Our Guest and a tavern dude.
Okay, Tony, that is so great.
That is so relevant.
With that, guys, thank you for making this podcast long with me. That's my favorite thing to do. And with that, guys, good night and good luck. Kirk, what about the lives of others?
The Chives of Mothers. I don't know. I'm not into it.
I'm thinking about the 90s film Love and Basketball.
Ah, I see. Love and Blue Balls. It's a great movie. It's actually one of my favorites.
I was thinking of A Pigeon Sat on a Bench Reflecting on Existence.
So you want to watch Seven? Okay, that's a great movie. It's a good one.
Kirk, I don't know if you've seen Interstellar, but
I've seen In Her Feller. That's a good one, actually. It's a good one. About the transvestite business in Thailand. Anyways, go ahead.
Speaking about Thailand and blue, I'm thinking about Blue Valentine.
I'm thinking about who blew Valen's mind. No.
Speaking of blue, what about blue is the warmest color?
What about the red is the sign that you should leave a relationship? Never mind. Go ahead.
Kirk, perhaps you've heard of this film, The Third Man, starring with Orson Welles.
I have heard of it. It's a turd on a fan. Yeah, I've heard of that one actually.
All right, well, here's a classic of the international cinema scene, The 400 Blows.
Oh, so that's is that the 400?
I thought he said 400 blows.
Disregard that, gentleman over there. The 400 blows, is that what is that? That's something about, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a girl's dignity? Is that correct? Something about that. All right.
I wouldn't know.
Tony, do you have anything?
Maybe.
City of God.
Let's see. What was the movie? City of Michael Pitt. No, I don't like that one. That one's okay, but.
What about Army of Darkness?
Oh, that's smarmy of harkens back to a time when I didn't have to do this kind of shit.
Now I'm thinking about the greatest film of all time, Small Soldiers.
That's actually true. He's right.
That's is that about phallic sizes in Toledo, Ohio? Is that right? Never mind.
I'm from
It's
Slovenia.
got Kirsten Dunst.
I was just sharing that. It has nothing to do with what you said. I just
One of my first crushes on.
Yeah. What about Grizzly Man? We've talked about Herzog in this program before.
Do you mean what is that movie? That's like the Jiro Dreams of Sushi ripoff, right? Where it's just it's like fresh meat, like different cuts of meat from a fucking crazy person who wants to go hang out with grizzlies. Yeah, I did see that one. That was pretty good.
What about Body of Lies?
Well, Citizen Kane. Yeah, no, I did see that one. It was amazing, but I do think it's underrated. I would say that.
Okay.
Brother Bear.
Brother Bear. That's Brother Bears all in an incest tell-all about a life not yet lived but desired.
Oh my God.
Well,
I don't know.
have quite an array of movies to choose from, Kurt.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I also think that you guys are great at suggesting movies. I just wish you didn't always come at, and just throw these highly sexualized, very misogynist movies at me. One time I want to watch a regular damn movie,
That's
like.
true.
Well, Beauty and the Beast for next time. That should be normal enough.